So we're going to stop here. We're going to talk about collaboration. We're going to prod some questions. These guys will tell us some fun stories, maybe sad stories. And we hope you guys get something out of it. How many of you guys have been here before? Okay. Really? Most of you haven't been here before. Well, we're a cult. And you guys are all part of it now. So thanks for joining. So I wanted to introduce my panel here. And I'm going to actually, this is Vicki here of Headspace. Give it up for Vicki. This is Russell Rommelfanger of Envoy. Give it up for Envoy. I almost said Rommelfinger. And we have Renee over here of Column 5. Give it up. Oh, there are signs. There are signs. This is amazing and adorable. Renee is so embarrassed. That is awesome. You're giving them raises? Are you their boss? Okay. Okay, she's a little nervous. We'll let it go through. Hey, Vicki, can you just tell us a little bit about what you do at Headspace and just a little bit of background about you and your life and just a short whatever intro.
Okay, is this on? Hello, hi everybody. Thanks for coming. So I just moved to LA about a month ago, which also means I just started at Headspace. I'm on the design team on the product side, so just working on most of the time new features and just trying to understand how to bring meditation into everyone's life. Before that, I was at a small startup for a short while. I won't talk about that because it was basically like an episode of Silicon Valley. And then prior to that, I was at Lyft for 2 years, working on the passenger ride experience. So every time you request a ride, that whole flow, getting into the car, and then finally rating and paying, I worked on that redesign. Should I keep going?
Okay, give it up for Vicki one more time. We'll do a talk show style. When they make a good point, you have to like cheer for them and give a good clap. Like, yeah, for Vicki. Okay, Russ.
You ready?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been doing the Envoy thing for 5 years. Before that, started my career building brands in the prepaid space. So building brands like Boost Mobile and Virgin Mobile when brands really didn't matter in a space like that. So, early in my career, I had incredible opportunity to build brands where brands didn't exist and talk to consumers in a new way. So that was pretty exciting. Taking something that had a lot of stigma behind it and really building something of culture. And from there, I partnered up with my brother and the guy I played Little League Baseball with, and we, they say don't do business with friends and family. We kind of did both, and it's worked out well for us. And
you guys kind of built up from small to big. It was basically it was a nothing company. It didn't exist. You guys started together, and now how many? I mean, it was no one. It
was something.
It was you two, and then you built. You have several people underneath your team.
How
many?
3 of us. It was a room quite like this. Had a couple roll-up garage doors, and when a client would come in, we'd hire some friends to come in and fill some space and gave some desk space away. But we went all in, and I think we're about 75 strong now.
Yeah, that's a big old agency now.
So building, still building brands and products. A lot of digital work, but a diverse group of makers, from strategists to designers to storytellers to producers.
Got you. And your big client would be Vizio, right? You did a lot of stuff.
They're one of our big clients. Do some work for the newer clients, Verizon, on some of their vehicle tracking acquisitions they've made. So solidifying that world for them, helping them build a brand. Just did some work for Tender Greens. I don't know if you guys have ever ate there, but there's going to be a new look and feel for Tender Greens coming out, and so excited to be part of that.
Your agency is really beautiful, man. I mean, the space that you guys built out is super cool.
Thanks.
You've hired all my friends.
Appreciate it. We spent a long time. It was pretty deliberate in terms of creating a space that was conducive to making great things, and so
awesome. Rad. So that's Russ, guys. And Renee, you got a microphone?
Hi.
You ready to tell us about the people that you manage over here?
Yeah, I'll tell you the story of how I came to these weirdos. So I went to LCAD, and in my junior year I applied to Column 5, and they never called me back. And Josh, like, what the hell?
Sorry.
So then afterwards, I graduated. I went to so I had been working for a couple teachers at their small studios, and I went to Los Angeles to work there for like 3 months until I realized that commutes are horrible. And then I called up Josh again, and then he's like, "Yeah, start on Monday." So it was cool. So I've been at Column 5. I started as a designer, and then I worked my way up to junior art director. Now I'm at director of design, and now I have the privilege of working with all of these crazy kids. So in the audience, there's a lot of designers and art directors, junior art directors too. So I get to work with all of them.
Column 5 was started by one of our Connecting Things co-founders, and we really like that agency too. It's pretty cool to see like that you guys have all built things just from nothing, and you built these cool agencies that do great work for awesome people. So that's Renee, guys. So if you could, let's start with Russ, because I'm actually pretty interested in you guys. You sort of just started right out the gate your own agency. What does collaboration kind of look like for your team, like on any given day? What are they collaborating on? And then how do you kind of how do you facilitate that? How do you get them to work together and create a great product?
That's a great question. I mean, I think everybody talks about collaboration being part of the process, and rarely do you see it really kind of take fruition. Yeah. And you talked a little bit about the space, and I mean, really, that's the genesis of why we built that space is around collaboration. And so, for us, it's much more about physical. Right? We spend so much time, on boxes, talking in the boxes, texting in boxes, and for us, it's about getting away from those boxes, and just having human conversations. And so, for me, when I see collaboration happening, it's people having coffee together, it's people sitting on the couch together, it's having impromptu meetings, and so it's really about getting the work out of the rig and getting it on the wall and having people pass by it and creating organic conversations. That's truly where the collaboration comes from.
That's awesome. Would you say that you facilitate that and you want to happen with your coworkers? And you're obviously scheduling times and meetings for those things to happen. Do things happen organically? Like, hey, me and such we're talking. We think this would be a great idea. Let's connect on and just go into a room and just jam out this concept. Does it happen organically in that way ever?
Yeah, all the time. I mean, I think if we do it right and people buy in and they kind of see the value benefit of it, right, and they see other people interested in the work they're doing, right. I think it's hard to get the work out there at first. You're putting yourself out there, being vulnerable. You're printing things out when they're never going to be printed out ever again. Like, who prints out a web page, right? But you get it out there and you start to be surprised what responses and positive and negative, and who starts to attach themselves to the project, right? They didn't start off on the project, but they become part of the project. So it's kind of a two-way street, right? And we've built in that flexibility too to allow people to kind of join into a project even if they don't start off on a project.
Yeah, that's cool, giving that freedom for creativity, and just if someone's qualified and you can get them right in on the project, that's great. Vicki, what does your kind of day-to-day collaboration look like with your team? We talked a little bit about you have the UX team and then you have the other team, and when do they ever cross over?
Yeah, so collaboration in-house is probably a bit different than at agency, which it feels like more people in LA are. And aside from like within the different product disciplines, it's really about getting all the other disciplines together. So for me, it's important to work with the PM, so product as well as data, and then even like QA, and we've got like the customer support people. And I think that's one of the cool things about working in-house is that you've got like the ability to have a bird's eye view over everything and really to get everybody in the same room working together, because you can do everything all you want as like a design team or a UX team or whatever, and then just that's not the real world, I guess, or that's not even the whole company, and things can be quite different as soon as you get out of like that design review.
Oh yeah, definitely. Once you get up against the sales team, they're like, we don't think we can move that product. We can redesign it.
Yeah.
And for you, Renee, collaboration on your team, what does it look like? Do you have? I know I've actually worked with Column 5 quite a bit, and you guys have kept the lights on for me. And I actually really like the way that project managers talk to designers, and they really seem to understand the language of design.
Yeah.
And that's a really cool thing. And just maybe the question for you would be, how did you facilitate that? How did you get your your project managers to understand design so well and speak that language? And then you guys have been really making great stuff out of that. So talk a little bit about that if you could.
I think one good thing to mention is that our project managers are producers, and I say that is because they're not just project managing. Like they are creative voices. A lot of them come from copywriting or journalism backgrounds. Like these are really creative people, and we get to work with them. So they usually tell the written story, and then they work with designers and art directors, and then we usually kind of collaborate. And designers might say like, well, if we use this word, or if you could put this paragraph over here, and maybe we could turn that into a chart. And then the producer's like, yeah, and then maybe we could move that over here. So those are my favorite kind of projects when we're working like side by side together. Every project has a designer and art director, so they're always working together. But for the little bit larger projects like motion projects or websites, branding, those are my absolute favorite, because that's like the more designers, like the merrier. So like on branding projects, we will like get out a huge sheet of paper all on like one big table, and we're all there just like heads down, and like Jenny draws something, and then Bridget's like, oh, but what if you do this? And then Chris is like, let's put a wheel on this, and let's do this. Like we just all like get together, and like those are the most successful projects. And a producer comes in, and then they just like turn it upside down, and it's even more fun. And then when we don't get to do it on projects, we do that on our own. Like we will come up with ridiculous games, or we will like stay late and sketch together.
Yeah, you guys seem like you have a lot of fun over at that
no,
place.
there's
I don't
all
know if you actually
seriousness.
work over there, but
Yeah, they don't have fun.
I think, thanks for giving that input there. That's pretty cool. I mean, I've never been in like a free drawing session like that. I mean, it sounds like it would actually be really fun and beneficial for creativity. How do you, it sounds like you're doing a good job of like setting your ego aside when you do something like that. We have everybody in on the project, and we just want to get the best idea. Like how do you frame your mind to do something? Because look, I have a giant ego. I do it all the time. I know better than my clients. There's no way they have as good a taste as me, blah, blah, blah. Like how do you coach yourself to do that right?
I think all of us have a very good understanding and respect for objectivity, and understanding why we're doing something. And I think a lot of designers are kind of like almost like lawyers at our job, because we know that whatever we put out there, we have to back it up with reason X, Y, and Z. So anytime we are talking to a client, I say, I made it blue because blue conveys this, and one of your objectives was to connect to this audience, and this is how blue is going to do that. So like we come at it from a very objective standpoint, and at that point there is no ego. If I try not to hire divas, but they usually
creep in. Josh Ritchie, this guy's a diva.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's pretty rad, being objective. I like that word especially, objectivity, placing that above all things.
And we have conversations about that. Like, we do our best to try to represent our department to other departments as well. So we have like AMA panels that we're doing right now, where we introduce ourselves like in a different way, where we're like, we're designers. This is what we care about. We care about solving a problem. We care about making something that looks really good. And so we
wait. So that AMA part,
yeah.
That's you telling your designers, hey, ask me anything? Is it like an
this is a
team building? I'm excited about this one.
So this is something that I introduced recently, because we talk about like our problems in our company pretty openly. Like, I want to improve our communication in this way, or I feel like I don't understand where you're coming from over here. So I thought it'd be cool if we had an AMA panel. For each department. So I started out with the designers, and so I gave a Google sheet to everybody in the company, and so I'm like, what do you want to know from designers? Ask them anything. I will facilitate this. So we had 3 designers, and then they just like kind of talked about things. And so we had account directors asking them like, do you ever feel like you're selling out? And we had producers asking them like, what's your biggest pet peeve, or like, how can I do my job better? And
the transparency is basically what you're saying, just kind of a fluidity between conversation and sort of, at Nike we used to call that coaching for excellence, would be sort of this, I sharpen you. And when you have the same objectives, we care about getting better together, because we know that ultimately we all get to keep our jobs. If we do better, then that's a cool objective. Thanks for sharing that. I wanted to ask you, Russ, because you work on these giant projects, these things that show up in everybody's living room. And the pressure to mount something like that and deliver on a deadline while managing all these developers and designers, and probably way more developers than designers. But what's it like to collaborate to crescendo into this big launch? How do you manage the pressure, and how do you manage the team in that?
Yeah, I think with kind of big problems comes you gotta find a big solution, right?
Sure.
And I think for us, it's always been about hiring great people with diverse backgrounds.
Yeah.
I think early on, the founders came from a brand background, and we always knew that it wasn't just going to be making logos. A brand was going to be much bigger than a 60-second spot or color palette. It was going to be how you can take $20 from one account to another, and so we wanted to be a part of that. And there were some missteps there. You gotta learn on the fly, and you got a really solid team, right? And I think that's part of it, is really learning through some of those challenges and finding people that have a desire to be a part of solving big problems, right? There's people that aren't cut out for it, and there's people that are, and we found those people to really want to kind of back those big initiatives. And I think at the end of the day, it's about learning from people with diverse backgrounds too, right? It's like, I'm only as good as what I know, and I don't know a lot about code. I can't code a lick. I wish I could, but if I can sit next to a guy and feed off of that, I'm going to be a better designer because of it. And so really, that's how you're going to solve big problems with lots of different people with lots of diverse backgrounds.
I mean, you say it kind of like, it's like you're building a house. You need guys who can tell you, like, yeah, the roof is just not right. But you wouldn't have known that if you're just like a guy who puts down the cement. I mean, you're counting on those people to point where the holes are and to also help you build the right thing, right?
Yeah, you got to find a contractor you trust, right? And I think when you're talking about building things, it's, again, if the wall's not true, the picture's not going to hang right. And so the beauty is when those kind of things come together, and I think it's a process, right? It's not the end product.
Yeah.
What we're building is, let's face it, it's disposable. It's going to be changing. It's going to iterate. You got to, of course, kind of step into that and make that part of the process too.
Totally.
Right? So we're putting those things out there, but it's about taking to the next level. I always say it's that Visio project, for instance. We're probably at step 1 of 10, and I'm okay with that. It's a lot of work to do. From here, it's more work to do now than there was at the get-go. So.
Gotcha. Well, Vicki actually came and worked with me today, and she got to hear all my music on blast. And we were talking a little bit, just for a moment. It seems like right now, tech and diversity are having a conversation right now about, we build these apps, and you said so eloquently to me about when you build something that is for a huge range of people, you probably need to include a lot of voices. And maybe if you could just expound on that and why it's a value, why it's a conversation we're having right now, and then how Headspace considers that, and if they do consider it, or other teams you've been on maybe consider it.
Yeah, so I think we were talking about it because we were trying to understand where this whole, it's been in the press. People are talking about diversity in tech, and I think the question you asked me was like, where did it come from? And I was trying to think hard. I mean, like, it's hard to understand where the root of that came from. But it felt like it had to do with just some products that weren't designed with the general population in mind. I think that's what we sort of came upon. What were some of the examples?
I gave some really good examples. I think the idea essentially was that, like, we exist in these small, like, groups. I live and work in Costa Mesa. I, like, virtually never leave this place unless my parents want to have Thanksgiving. And so then the concept you were talking about was just the idea of, like, we live and work in this small group, and then we build these things for a mass group, and just the effectiveness.
I think an example are like scissors. If you look at scissors, they're made for like male hands, right-handed people. I think the example from Apple Health is something like they didn't start menstruation tracking or female things, which is like half or more of the population. They didn't add that until recently, and so I think when you look at any of these tech products and then you look at who's working on them, it becomes even more important to have like representation across not just backgrounds and skill sets, but also just like age and sort of not just schooling and sort of are you a designer or whatever, but where did you grow up and how did you grow up, socioeconomic stuff. So just everything as much as you can.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. I think I designed women's sportswear. I don't know if people know, but I also designed girls' sportswear. So like all the butterflies and hearts. That was all me doing it.
This is like a pain point for me.
What? Oh.
Because remember how we were talking about riding motorcycles? So I have a small motorcycle, and if you try to find women's motorcycle gear, it's likely designed by this guy, and he'll put like pink on it, like. Pink and
first
then,
off,
like,
there's a lot of T's in the line. There weren't only butterfly heart T's in my defense.
But why is it all pink?
There was tough stuff. There was lots of tough stuff. I think I honestly, that's a great question. We didn't want to overgeneralize when I was on that team, so we had a massive range of T-shirts to do. We did lots of motorcycle tees. No, we didn't do a single one, but we did cater to, look, women don't have to wear pink. They can wear black. They can wear whatever color they want. But we also, in terms of subject matter imagery, look, my boss was a female, so she coached me through this. But designing for, you have to think in like a brain of like who my consumer is, also who my parent or who's buying the stuff and the parents are. So it's sort of, line planning is its own beast. You have,
Yeah, I think that falls into the quadrant. So that kind of standard 2x2 of stuff like but you don't know. Like that falls under stuff that. Like you don't know what you don't know. I think there, like you didn't maybe know that women don't just want that, and I think
I didn't.
Yeah.
I did. And well, I mean, it's a thing to consider. I know exactly what you're saying. I said hearts and butterflies as an example. Maybe I shouldn't.
Freudian slip.
Lots of women here can have whatever they want. You can, whatever subject matter or content you want.
But that's just sort of an anecdotal example of like if you've ever been a woman trying to find gear in a male-dominated or appearing to be a male-dominated industry, it's quite hard. Or it's just not, like women don't make men's stuff that's like all blue. That's like an artifact of when we were young, right? Blue is for men and pink is for, or rather boys.
I have designed some pink tees for men. Okay. And I own some pink stuff too.
It seems to be in here in LA, the salmon color.
Salmon's in. It's a hot color. It's pretty good, and that kind of magenta turns red thing.
Millennial pink.
There's a lot of guys in Florida who wear coral shorts. They dress basically like it's Easter every day, every single day. So enough about me, and back to the panel. So I guess I wanted to talk a little bit about how let's say you're working on a team, you have some smaller voices, they're not quite as loud as mine, and you have some people who might be more timid, a little bit more shy, and you're working in a group setting, so some, the dynamics of like, who speaks the most and who speaks the least, and kind of facilitating that conversation so that every voice gets heard. What's like it sounds like you're doing a great job of it over there, Renee. How do you... You're like, I don't want to compliment myself, but you just told me everyone draws. So how are you thinking in those modes? How are you getting yourself to get the voice of the individual who's a little bit more timid, and then you have the loud guy like me? How do you get them to not talk all the time?
I was so working at Column 5 was like my first experience as being a supervisor of any sorts, and I learned a lot of hard lessons. So I was just the kind of person that like I would just send a novel of an email, and one designer was just like, hey, I'm not gonna read this shit. And then I'm like, you better, that's all I'm gonna do. Like I don't have time for this, so like we kind of hashed it out, and then he's like, look, I learned so much better if you just come to my desk and you just talk to me about it, and I'm like, oh right, there's different modes of communication. I know this, and I really had to like take my ego out of it and be like, yeah, my job is not to tell people how to do something. It's to listen and learn how they learn and learn how to communicate in a bunch of different ways. And thank God I learned that lesson early. So now when I work with a bunch of different designers, and I encourage everybody at Column 5 to do this, is to ask people, what's the best way for me to communicate with you? What's the best way for me to give you edits or to give you feedback, or how do you like to be, how do you like to handle this stuff? And everybody's different, and I encourage everybody to learn about each other. And so when I know that, this designer likes me to go to his desk all the time, and this designer likes those emails, and this designer likes pictures, you know. And so I think it's everybody's responsibility to like take that step and ask what it is, like what is your communication style.
You're a very good manager. I like wish that I had I could barely read. If somebody writes me a long email.
It's also because I tell every designer to be like, criticize me always, and they do not hesitate to do that.
That's awesome.
So,
and they brought signs.
Yeah.
That's how much they like you.
Yeah.
I think another instance where this is extra important, and I think the one-on-one thing and sort of breaking down that barrier is absolutely like a great way to do it. Where I've seen this extra important is in a design review where you've got like the loudest voice problem or the senior folks talking, and then the more junior people like kind of just, you know, waiting to listen. And something that's worked well for us at Lyft, or them at Lyft, I should say, is doing this thing. I think that they do at Facebook where you kind of write down all of your critique on Post-its, and you can group them into ideas or questions, and then everyone goes around and puts up their 2 top ones, so that like you don't spend a long time with like the first few getting all the time for the crit, and then kind of you run out of time at the end, and or the quiet people don't get a chance to speak. So it's a pretty like democratic process.
Well, that's actually, you brought up critique. Oh, sorry, you had something to say,
I was
Russ.
gonna say, I think the other thing too that we've seen is just is preparation, right? It's one thing to get your work out there and be vulnerable, and that's, I think that's step one. But you know, how do you prepare yourself for that critique? You know, what insights do you have for the work, right? What's the thinking behind the work? And you know, that doesn't naturally come to young designers. You know, they came from a world of making something, you know, look really pretty, right? And there's a lot more to it, and you learn that over time. But if you know, we found that if we can kind of accelerate that, and if we can pay attention to that, you know, off the bat as almost an onboard into the organization, you know, we're going to be that much more successful. They're going to be that much successful. The clients don't slow down, projects don't slow down, and so how do you kind of catch up, and how do you get them up to speed? You know, so there's a lot more rationale in those conversations, and there's much deeper thinking and deeper conversations and more valuable critiques. I think that's when true growth really happens, is when there's great conversation.
Yeah, it could be a bit of a shock from just, you know, if you're just a student and then you hop into the real world, it's like, buddy, this isn't cutting it. I got to give you some feedback. You're not considering this user. You're not considering this problem. Like, in dealing with critique and feedback, like, it seems like there'd be quite a bit of a learning curve in getting people to understand that you're not just critiquing them because you're their boss. You're critiquing them because you just want to create a great product. Like, what are some best practices in giving feedback, and then maybe even taking feedback from team members?
Yeah, it wouldn't do that individual any good. It wouldn't do the client any good, you know, if you weren't honest, all right? And I think that's probably the hardest thing. That's the, you know, the one thing that kind of, you know, bust that kind of conversation at the seams, and you know, that's where things become personal, and all the things like a critique shouldn't really be, right? You know, and I think it takes the leaders in the room and the people that have been there and done that to, you know, step back, realign, and kind of take the emotions back out of it, and get back to the insights. Like, why did we do this? You know, what was the true brief? What's the end consumer going to think about that? And when the conversation gets there, it's much more productive of a critique.
Yeah, just getting them. What's that word you said? Objective. Be objective about the problem solving. What did you have to say, Vicki?
I was just gonna say sometimes it just kind of comes down to reminding them that you're critiquing the work and not them, and like that little simple little distinction helps, because they're still great.
There's something that I've like experienced a lot at Column 5, where a lot of non-designers will talk to me and be like, how do I tell a designer this? Or I want to say this, but I'm not really sure. And like, I don't want to hurt their feelings. And I don't, like, this is them. It's their artistic expression. I'm like, hold up. Designers are not they're not artists, okay? So like, there's a difference between expression and problem solving. And so I always tell people, I'm like, designers can handle whatever feedback you give them. I promise you. They went to art school. They've been dragged through the mud. They've been like, they've had their shit ripped up in front of them. Like, they've been publicly humiliated. Like, designers are tough. Like, they can handle any feedback you give them usually, and if they can't, then it goes into like talking about emotions, and that's not how we like to frame feedback. So we don't say, I don't like this. This doesn't look good, or whatever. We just say like, this isn't working. This is not aligning with the objective in this way. So it
Yeah.
goes back to objectivity.
But it's interesting then. I mean, you two have clients and you kind of have a consumer, right? So you guys get feedback from your clients. They bounce ideas back on you, and they probably don't know about coding or graphic design as much as you guys do. How do you accept their critique? How do you collaborate and give it back to them? Does it sharpen you? How often are they right? Talk a little bit about, that.
Our clients are our best friend, and we shouldn't expect them to understand design. That's why they hired us. And so part of our responsibility is to deliver on the brief, but part of our job is to educate, right, and to set the tone and table for the work we're putting out in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
And it is hard. You spend a lot of time doing that, but if you truly want the product to get to kind of the end position, you're going to have to do that, and you'll find that you're going to learn a ton from your clients if you open up to them. It's so easy to client bash, right? I mean, I think.
Yeah, I don't like that
we
much.
We take a much different tone. That's the easiest thing to do is to bash the client. The hard thing is to solve the problem, and so we're much more interested in running at that problem and solving and truly, some of the things that you can learn from these people in different spaces is amazing, right? It's the project becomes a much more than the end deliverable. It becomes taking on more knowledge, and it's interesting how that knowledge kind of plays itself out into the next project and the next engagement. So I think it's a compounding thing too, and if you're not taking that from your client or your partner, I think you're totally missing it.
Yeah, I mean, there's almost a cool thing that's sort of built into it too, that like your client being, let's say they are a layman, like in terms of understanding graphic design, it's helpful. Like, in fact, you're almost like beta testing it on them. Like, you're getting the feedback of like, how do I use this dongle? I don't know what this icon means. And those kinds of, like for us, graphic designers, like it seems so intuitive. And then you just shop it to them right away. They don't understand it. They can actually, a lot of my projects end up being better by just, having good client feedback. And then also having the same objectives. We want to get to the same point. I want to help you with sales. But I was actually kind of curious how you guys have feedback about your product. Do you do like focus groups, or do you just, questionnaires? Is it your rating on iTunes or the app?
Yeah. That one, many things. So not focus groups, they're kind of trash.
Shout out to focus
groupthink
groups.
is kind of a thing, and I don't know. I'm not in marketing either, so. So on the front end, there's a lot of like exploratory and ethnographic user research we can do to try to understand like where they're coming from and what like needs we're fulfilling, and then afterwards there's usability testing and like beta testing and then things like that. But in terms of like how do we know? It doesn't really matter if they like it, or how everyone hates like when a new feature comes out or when there's a redesign. Like in that way, it doesn't matter if they like it, but it matters if they're using it and they're finding some benefit in it, which is why we were working on it in the first place. So does that answer your question?
No, that's a great.
Okay.
I mean, and you intercept that feedback, and you have to collaborate on creating a new product or doing some update. I mean, you brought up a really good like example of like Facebook would do a redesign, and then everyone's like, oh no, this is the worst thing ever. We're going to join a Facebook group to revolt against the Facebook update and just spit our hate out on the new product, but people continue to use it and they like it more. Like, in that terms of feedback, like you're trying to push something new out there. And honestly, I totally co-sign on Headspace. It's honestly really helped me with my OCD anxiety. I think it's one of the greatest tools. And if you don't meditate, you totally should. But when you're creating something new, something maybe that doesn't exist before, or maybe there's no players, you got to sell these ideas out there, or at least believe in them just enough. Do you guys have any stories of where you're just creating something new? Or I know I'm putting you on the spot here with the story time, but do you have any interesting like ways to pitch those ideas to your client to get them to believe in it and push that thing forward? It's okay if you don't have a story, but just some insights.
Well, I think the most successful pitches I have is when they ask me what I'm most excited about. So like usually when we pitch something to a client, we have, tier 1, 2, and 3 option, and 1 is what you can get within the budget, and like 2 is pushing it just a little more, and 3 is what we're most excited about, and this is why. And like it's easy to light up about that, and it's easy to start like just going off on your imagination and just being like, oh yeah, we could set up a pop-up shop, and we can sell t-shirts with this, and we can have an Instagram campaign, and we can do all of this cool stuff. And they see like a designer light up about it, and then they get stoked on it. And even if they don't get stoked all the way, like maybe they can just get a little bit more, and they're like, well, I like what you said about this thing, so I want to do that. And maybe I can run that up to management, like get some more budget on that,
Oh,
but
yeah.
I think just showing how passionate you are usually sells people on it, as long as you're not faking it, But that's something that I look for in designers, is like when I'm hiring for designers, is ones that have like a genuine interest and a genuine passion for what they're doing. Someone that likes to improvise, and someone who has side projects, who like after work they still go home and they still do something creative. Like damn, like that's inspiring. And I love seeing that in designers, and I think clients like seeing that too, and they like seeing that in their partners.
Yeah, I think to echo what you're saying, I think we get so caught up in what's the project, what they tell us to do.
Yep.
And for us, we actually even have a part of the process where we call it beyond the brief, and it's to be proactive. It's to go out there and say, what are adjacent ideas that we can put in front of a client that we really believe in. And it's crazy how some of those tend to be, the thing that wins us that next project, or the one that we're more proud of, or the one that's actually moved the needle more. So I think it's in anything when it comes to design, right, and creating product, it's really about being proactive and thinking beyond kind of just that surface level task.
Yeah. I mean, pitching those ideas to your client, sometimes they come to you, they have, hey, we really need you to build us a box, and you're like, what you need is a ball, a sphere. Like, I need something different.
We got to build them. Yeah, you got to build them a box first, and then you just try to roll the ball down the.
So you always build them the box, and then you give them, hey,
right
you actually need the ball.
Yeah.
Check it out. And then just give it up for our panelists in general, guys. Thanks for coming here.